like I said, I can't really tell you very much about what's going on. Not yet, anyway. Tomorrow, after I've had a good night's sleep, I'll try explaining as much as possible. But there's one thing you can do for me. I have reason to suspect that somebody's out to get me, or Cortez. What's that noise? Where's that light coming from? Oh! Oh, not again. Not now. I hope this is a dream. I really do, because if Cortez didn't open a shift, who did? And how will I get home again on my own? No dream, and I'm guessing this is Mercuria. It smells like it, like a mix between fresh flowers and cow dung. There's some kind of party going on in there.
Well, we're back in Arcadia, but we're in our underwear.
I'm in my undies. That's so not appropriate.
We were sleeping in the real world, so we're in our underwear, and we made it to Arcadia in our dreams. Well, not in our dreams, but we opened a portal up while we were dreaming, probably. Now we gotta figure out how to... what's going on in Arcadia, maybe how we can get some clothes.
She looks like she works here.
Hey, bartender lady.
Hello?
Can you help me?
Hi, hello, do you work here?
Do I work here, child? I'm the owner. I own and operate the Journeyman Inn.
Oh, I didn't know.
Of course you did not, child, but be careful. Others may not be as quick to forgive as I am when you address them disrespectfully.
Is there a party going on?
Is there a party going on?
Is there a... child, do you not know? It is the Feast of the Balance. Have you never taken part in the celebration?
No, I have not.
Unfortunately, no. I'm not a party person.
For as long as I can recall, the feast has lasted 3 whole days and nights, and everyone celebrated openly. But now, this year, there's great concern about the Vanguard and their supporters. So this year, the Feast of the Balance is celebrated inside, behind closed doors, and for 1 night only. But there's still much food and drink, and you are welcome to join if you so please.
I don't think so. I don't know anybody here.
You're not with the Vanguard, are you?
No, I'm from somewhere else, far away.
So it would seem. Well, if you feel up to it, child, you're welcome to join in the celebration.
Thanks.
Now, let me ask you your name as well.
What's your name?
Benrima Salmon. I'm the owner and proprietor of this inn. I bought it with money earned through honest trade in the Southlands. Tobacco, wine, slaves. That is where I'm from. The Southlands.
I'm April. April Ryan.
Well met, April Ryan. Have you come to meet someone, a handsome young suitor, perchance?
No such luck, I'm afraid. I'm here more by accident than anything else.
Ah, no accident, April. Fate. Fate delivered you here tonight. You are strong in fate, are you not?
Good honest labor like alcohol, tobacco, and slavery. What does it mean when you say strong in fate?
What do you mean by strong in fate?
You shape your own fate, and not the other way around. You are what the dark people call a wave.
How can you tell?
I am not only an innkeeper, child. I am a seer, taught by my mother, who was taught by her mother before her. And so it goes back to the dawn of our world, to the dawn of magic.
Old magic. Why do you celebrate the feast?
Why do you celebrate the Feast of the Balance?
You are a stranger to our customs indeed. The balance. You do know about the balance, do you not?
Sure. The balance between magic and science. I know about the balance.
The balance of all, child. Everything is in balance, and the Guardian watches over the balance and us. We celebrate the Feast of the Balance to give our thanks to the balance and to the Guardian. If our devotion to the balance falters, if we lose our faith in the Guardian, then we are inviting chaos to destroy us. This is what the Vanguard is doing. Inviting chaos. They are dangerous.
I agree, they are dangerous.
What's the Vanguard doing to destroy the balance?
They are not doing anything to destroy the balance, but they destroy people's faith in the balance. They speak to the people, telling them how the Sentinel, the Fathers, are holding our world back. And that if we were to use the balance to our advantage, we could return to the old ways, the ways of the ancient Earth, before the divide. Vanguard promised the people power and wealth and happiness, but they intend only destruction, death.
That sounds bad. What does it mean to be a seer?
What's a seer?
A seer is someone who can tell something about people, about events, about the past and the present and the future, just by looking at you. When I look at you, I see.
What? What do you see?
Most people are drawn along by events, by fate, like a carriage after a horse. But some people know how to steer the horse, to change paths at will. You are such a person, but there is more.
What else is there? Can you tell me more?
Tell me more about my future.
It is strange. I see many paths, but they are all dark. I cannot tell much except that you are strong in fate, and strong in the balance. And you are strong in magic, too.
Magic? That can't be right. I don't know anything about magic.
You do not have to know about magic to be strong with magic. If you ever learn how to harvest your talents, you will be a strong artisan.
Artisan?
Where have you been schooled, child? Have you forgotten your lore?
Maybe I have.
My lore? Yeah, well, I haven't really had much use for my lore lately.
The artisan is the most powerful of magic users. She is able to shape magic and to use it by force of will alone. An artist can use magic shaped by others, mold it into new magic, new art. A magician, or sorcerer, witch, warlock, can read and write incantations, drawing spells from the power of words. And the alchemist can create magic potions. He is the least of the four. Anyone with proper education can be an alchemist. The other three require some form of talent for magic.
Maybe we could become
Thank you.
a magic user.
I am at your service anytime, child. I am afraid I must go take care of my guests now. Enjoy yourself.
Well, thanks for the information. What are you?
That looks like a really, really comfortable chair.
Looks like it's the chair's made out of a living thing.
They're definitely having fun. It's their first date, I can tell. They're a cute couple. I wonder if romance is different here, or if the rituals are the same as back home. I mean, magic must play some part in it. They don't look so different from farmers and craftsmen back home. It's a small world. Worlds. Small worlds. What a
Strange creature. Let's say hello.
Thank you, April Ryan.
What?
There is no time here, but there soon will be time for you and I. Time enough, to be sure. You are speaking to me, April Ryan. We have spoken.
I don't understand what you're... And how do you know my name? Who are you?
Have we not met yet? I was sorry, then, for confusing you. I will be Abnaxus of the Venar, ambassador to the Ireed Council in Marcuria for a time.
In the
I
future?
think I would have remembered you if we'd met. Who told you my name?
You did. You are saying your name to me, April Ryan. In this moment, you tell me your name. You question why I know your name, and you speak to me the blessings of the balance for my long journey home.
Sorry, I really don't know what you're talking about.
It is difficult for us too, April Ryan, to understand you. We, the Venar, are not perceiving time like your people. In this moment we are everywhere. In this moment we are nowhere. But there is a veil. Beyond this veil we are not seeing, but you have. You will be seeing. You are seeing.
What veil?
The veil created in chaos, by chaos, with chaos. It is a dark presence in our future, yes, future. A dark veil which hides the things that have been and will be.
What's all this got to do with me?
It was late. You were tired. We have talked in the morning when you come to visit me. Now you understand everything. Thank you, April Ryan. The blessings of the balance to you too.
Did you just invite me to your home?
I will. I did. I invite you to my home, April Ryan. My home was in the Marcuria City Green, and you will find it. In the morning, before chaos came. I am explaining everything, and you understood.
It seems I've already accepted your invitation, so I guess I don't have a choice.
That is what you said. Good night. You will sleep well.
Well, now we know what we're going to do. Maybe this creature will be able to
It's a
answer
very
some of our
comfortable chair.
questions.
I really am getting tired. I should find somewhere comfortable to sit down, rest my legs for a few minutes.
Go sit in the comfy chair. There looks to be some weird stuff happening in Stark. experiments being done on Cortez.
Wake up, child.
Good morning.
Sorry, I guess I fell asleep. What time is it?
It is morning. We need to clean before we open for breakfast, so I had to wake you.
I slept right through the party?
It seems so. You did not stir even when everyone was leaving.
Oh well, I feel pretty good considering.
You look a little pale, but it's nothing a good porridge won't fix.
The back rooms are both empty.
Do you intend to walk about in that outfit, child? It is day, it would not be proper.
It's all I have.
Come, we will find something more suited to a young lady about the city.
That sounds good. So what kind of outfit do I have now?
How do I look?
Oh, you look nice.
Well, it'll have to do for now. You do not have the most womanly of forms, but I'm certain you will fill out in time. With the right diet.
Thanks. Thank you for the clothes, for everything.
You will have time aplenty to thank me while you are cleaning plates and cutlery, child.
I'm sorry. Work?
Those clothes do not come free, child, nor does a night spent sleeping before the fire. I'm not asking much, only for a helping hand in cleaning.
Okay, I'll help you.
All right. Tell me where to start.
You can start carrying in the mugs from the back room. You did good work for me today, child. More than was required. Here you are. Some coin to help you out. And keep the clothes. You seem to have grown into them already.
Now we have more money.
I got a whole handful of these Arcadian iron coins.
Now we can get out. Busy street.
I look like a serving maid. I wonder if she's caught anything today. Square jaw and broad shoulders. A real farm boy. Quite a sexy one, too.
What is that thing?
That's a funny-looking animal.
Let's touch the animal.
Good beast. His hide feels like a turtle's, but softer. Yeah, good boy. Good boy.
Interesting creature. Alright, now we have a new place to go in the city green.
It's a flower bed. There's plenty of room for more seeds to be planted in there. It's a leaf of organic plastic. It grows. It converts carbon dioxide into oxygen, but it doesn't need water or sun. No nourishment of any kind, actually. Convenient, but disturbing.
Can we plant this?
good at this, but hey, I was born on a farm. That's gotta count for something. Now, grow. Whoa, I must be a natural-born gardener.
That was fast.
Strangest thing, I thought I heard a voice say something about a book of secrets. That the book of secrets is now open. Something like that. Huh.
Oh, that is a thing. In the main menu. Oh. We have a book of secrets in the main menu.
It's a flower bed.
It is a flower bed. We'll look at that some other time.
That's one mother of a plant. I wonder if it's a carnivore.
Let's knock on the door.
Enter, honored guest, and I would have been with you presently.
Some of them look to be in English, but I know they're not. It's the Altung language Tobias told me about. The tongue of magic. Sounds a little disgusting, to be honest.
He's probably upstairs.
Ruminations on the Chaos Principle by Roar Agastanja.
Oh, there he is. Hello, Abnaxis.
Be welcomed, stranger, to my abode.
Stranger? Don't you remember me? You invited me here.
Every moment we meet, and every moment we part. You are both stranger and friend, April Ryan.
I'm sorry, but could you try to be a little less obtuse this time? I have a hard time understanding half of what you say.
I will beg for your forgiveness, April Ryan. I had a hard time to make myself understood amongst other peoples. I will pull myself into this moment, difficult as it may be, so that we can communicate and so that you may understand. It is important that you understand, April Ryan, very important.
Who are you?
I am Abnaxis of the Venar, ambassador to the Ireed Council in Marcuria. My people live far from here, and they do rarely visit your kind, and so I am their sole link to humans and Dolmari.
Why is that?
I alone among the Venar am able to focus on a particular moment and thread in time, and so to speak with those who flow with time, like you.
So we can't understand the thing that most of your other countrymen are saying.
How do your people perceive time?
It is hard to explain. Any moment before this moment, and any moment after, is the same to me as this one. I have lived already, and I am yet to live. Do you understand me?
Not truly.
I think so, but how's that possible?
Everything is possible, April Ryan. There is magic, and there is science, and between the two, everything is possible.
Can you see the future?
Can you see the future?
To me, every moment is the same. There is no future. I can relate moments you have yet to see, and I can unravel possible threads. But remember, the future I see may not be the one into which you walk. Moments and threads fluctuate, change. I can remember things that have never come to pass, and I have seen things that will never be.
So you can't tell the future.
I would see your possible futures, the likely threads among hundreds. If there was not a veil in time, I would.
Okay, so it is. You can see possible futures. I kind of get that. My choices shape the future, but there is a veil, like the dark clouds cast by the dark side of the Force. You can't quite tell what's going on with me this time.
What's this veil you keep talking about?
Somewhere ahead in our path, there is a dark veil through which I cannot pass, past which I cannot see. It is disconcerting to me to be blocked from the moments of my life.
How did this veil come to be?
It was, no, will be created in chaos, by chaos, to keep the future hidden. All threads converge on a single point here, beyond the veil, and this will happen only once. It is written.
Written? Where?
In the prophecies.
What kind of prophecies are you talking about?
Tell me about the prophecies.
Words have been written by seers who can discern from all possible threads the threads that are certain to be woven. These words are the prophecies.
And what do the prophecies say?
Prophecies speak of a time when the balance will falter, weakened by the assault of chaos and its servants. The moment the veil falls is the moment of uncertainty. The balance may stand, the balance may fall. I cannot tell which it will be, and I cannot even see the possibilities, the threads extending from each fork. But the prophecies also speak of a Savior, as the prophecies usually do, one who will bring order to chaos, only to release chaos on the innocent, one who will restore the balance, only to finally break it.
That doesn't sound like a savior.
The word in my tongue is Kanang La. Literally translated, it means the small seed who grew to a tall tree.
I need some help in my quest.
Yes, you did.
I did? And what did you answer?
That I will help you as much as I can, but in the end...
I'm on my own. I've heard that one before.
Okay, so you know a couple of things about this world that I don't, so tell me about dragons.
What do you know about dragons?
I do not know much about the kin, but I do know a little. Perhaps it will help you, perhaps not. The Draic Kin came to this world a very, very long time ago, before the dawn of man, before the divide. The Venar had yet to learn to be outside time, and there were few other peoples on Earth. The kin played an important part in the divide, in separating magic from science, and in the founding of the Fathers, the Sentinel, to watch over the balance. It is said that after the divide of the 4 Draic kin that came to Earth, 2 went to Stark, and 2 to Arcadia. But that was a long time ago, 12,000 of your years. I do not know what has become of them since.
So you don't know where I could find the ones that are still alive?
You don't know where I may find these Draic Kin?
No, the white of the Draic Kin, the mother, has, according to legend, been sighted. The tale of the silver spear of Gorimon speaks of the mother and her child. Though I think this is but a tale, and far from the truth.
The story is called The Silver Spear of Gorimon?
Yes, unfortunately I do not have this book myself, and I do not know of anyone who does.
I think the mother is the dragon that we saw way at the beginning of the game.
What about the other dragon, the other Draic Kin?
Of the Draic Kin, I only know of the mother, the white of the kin, although I have heard tell of a god who fell from the sky into the ocean a great long time ago. But this may also be just a tale.
A god who fell into the ocean.
What else do you know about this god who fell from the sky?
Only what I have told you. Someone with greater knowledge of the ocean and the creatures that live beneath its surface may be able to tell you more.
So I need to find a marine biologist.
Have you heard of a disc that works as a key to the Guardian's realm?
Yes, but very little. It has been spoken of in the I Read Council only recently, brought to attention by the Tyrant ambassador. He wished to know where it is kept.
And what was the answer?
No one at the council knows or admitted to knowing, and the ambassador was asked to speak with the Sentinel, which he is unlikely to concede to. The Tyrant are allied with the Vanguard, and so are in political and ideological opposition with the Sentinel. I know Vestrum Tobias. He would not speak a word with the Tyrant, nor the Vanguard. Not unless it was to challenge their philosophies.
So you don't know where the disc is?
So you don't know where I can find the disc?
No. Ask Vestrum Tobias.
Okay, so you have a little bit of info on a couple things here. What about a rift that brings us to where the Guardian is supposed to reside?
Do you know anything about a rift leading to the Guardian's realm?
I have heard speak of such a thing. I believe it was where the tower was built and the divide created. When the earth was one, it might still be open.
Any idea where it is?
I am afraid the Venar were never very involved in the affairs of the Sentinel, nor took any part in the divide except to agree to the necessity of it. We had little choice but to concede. We are a magical people. We need the balance, because we could not survive without magic.
How would I go about fighting chaos?
You cannot fight chaos. It is not so simple. To oppose chaos, one must return order to that which has been affected by chaos, and thus reduce its powers. But this is not something everyone can do. Only those ordained by the balance can embark on such a dangerous task and survive.
I think that'll be all for now then.
That's about it for now.
I am glad I could be of assistance, April Ryan.
See, what else can I ask you?
Can I ask you a few questions?
Yes.
So what do you do?
Could you tell me a little bit about yourself, Abnaxis?
Me? About myself? We, the Venar, are not good at speaking of ourselves. We always know who we are, and so we have no need to tell each other.
Well, are you married? Do you have kids? Or perhaps your people don't marry?
Yes, we do marry, and we always know who we are to be with, because our future is also our past, and so we also know our children, even though, according to your reckoning, they have yet to be born. My wife will be, the beautiful Abyanda. She lives by the Bay of Fire in the east. She gave birth to our 3 female children, Abratha, Abalexa, Abpalmana.
How long has it been since you last saw them?
I see them now, April Ryan. Do not forget I perceive time in a different manner from your kind. I have given them your regards.
Well, Say hi to them for me. Have you heard of a man named Cortez?
No, I have not. But that does not mean I do not know him. Names are often fleeting, April Ryan.
He's my... well, some have called him my mentor, others a nutcase. I'm not sure which it is, but I'm leaning towards the former.
Your mentor? He is a shifter as well?
No, I don't think so. He doesn't travel. Shift between Stark and Arcadia.
I do not see him in my life, April Ryan. I do not know him. Beyond the veil, perhaps, but not before.
What are you doing in Mercuria?
Why did you come here to Mercuria?
I was chosen to be ambassador to Ireed when I showed a talent for seeing the flow of time from one point to the next. I was trained for a long time in locking myself into a single moment to communicate and understand your world. My people do not normally involve themselves with others, but the veil has forced us to do so.
Why don't the Venar want to involve themselves with humans?
In the wrong hands, our knowledge is dangerous. To know of the possible fluctuating futures, this can be a weapon to some who flow with time. We cannot interfere with your time. We are not allowed.
Who says?
The balance. The Guardian. The Guardian watches not only the balance between worlds, but also the balance within. Time is in balance, and if this balance is upset, the Guardian would know.
I thought the Guardian was gone.
So he is, and that makes it even more crucial to my people that we preserve the balance and not upset it. Chaos is our enemy, April Ryan, and we do our part to keep it at bay, as do you.
So his people are good-natured, it seems, because they've been given an unfair advantage over the rest of society. It seems like it did kind of hurt them in a way. They can't communicate with other people very well because of the way they perceive time has totally changed who they are as a people. And they don't share this power or use it for their own gain to preserve the balance.
Are you planning on ever going back to your people?
When we pass through the veil to the other side and time yet again opens up, I will return to my people. I look forward to that day. I miss my people, and it is hard to speak with your kind. It makes me tired.
I know what you mean. I'm a stranger here too.
You will bring us through the veil, April Ryan, and then we can both leave this place and go home.
Where is your home, Abnaxis?
Across the border mountains and north, to where the forests are evergreen, and where in winter the land turns white.
It sounds nice. I'll take my leave, Abnaxis.
Thanks, Abnaxis.
You are always welcome, April Ryan.
Thanks for your hospitality, Abnaxis.
Goodbye. Blessings of the balance to you, April Ryan, and may your journey have been a long and fruitful one.
The Death of a Venar by Gale.
Okay, and then I think we ought to go to Tobias, because that seems to be what Abnaxis here suggested. Tobias, I'm back.
Good morning, Tobias.
Why, it's April, my friend from Stark. Have you come to visit us again?
So
Evidently.
It appears. I didn't exactly come here by choice this time, though.
Oh? How so, if I may ask?
In a weird and twisted way, it's nothing out of what's become the substitute for ordinary in my life. One second I was in my room in Newport, the next, I was in a dark alley in Arcadia.
You must have opened a shift while you were sleeping. Good. This means you are learning to harness your magic.
Yeah, I guess, except I don't think I'll be able to get back home again. And this time, my mentor, Cortez, has no idea that I'm here.
Ah, but I'm sure you will find a way to channel and control your power soon. In the meantime, is there anything I can do to help?
I met this guy called Abnaxis. I can't talk to you about him though. Yeah, I need to find all these things. The disc that unlocks the Guardian's Tower, the entrance to the Guardian's Realm, and the 2 dragons.
I need to locate the 2 dragons that reside in Arcadia.
The Draic Kin?
What's the difference?
Dragons is a word from your world. The kin are not what they have become in your legends and fairy tales.
But they're real, aren't they?
Oh, as real as you and me, April. And old. They have been here since before our time. As you probably remember, the kin were instrumental in the Divide, saving mankind from a terrible end. But I know so little. Only what I can remember from my studies when I was a minstrel at the Enclave.
The Enclave? So where can I find more info on the dragons? The Draic Kin.
How can I get more information on the Draic Kin?
Books, daughter, books. The wisdom of the ages. There is one tome you should study, called The Secrets of the Draic Kin, by Minstrom Elniak. It is old but informative, and it captures the imagination.
Where can I find this book?
Pay a visit to the Sentinel Enclave, located outside the city to the east. The great library of the Enclave contains every book ever written by an Arcadian minstrom, and most others as well. Speak with Minstrom Yerin, the keeper of books. Tell him I sent you.
Okay, good. Let's see, then there's also how to find the disc that unlocks the Guardian's Tower.
I need to locate the disc that unlocks the Guardian's Tower.
The disc that is the key? Yes, it is needed. It might even restore balance, provided the new Guardian accompanies it to the tower, of course. But you wish to find the disc yourself?
I have to. Cliché or not, it's our only hope.
You do this often, then? Save worlds?
It's an expression. Heroism in my world is more of a cliché than anything else.
I do not understand. But then I am merely a servant of the balance, while you are more. But yes, the disc. As I told you once before, when the Earth was divided, and the realm of the Guardian created, a disc was forged in the Well of Making. The disc was to serve 2 purposes. As a key to the Tower of Balance should it become necessary to enter it in the Guardian's absence. And as a replacement for the disc that is already in the tower should it be broken. The tower is now abandoned and locked, and the old disc shattered. I do think the time is right for the second disc to be brought forward and used.
So where is that disc?
Where is the disc now?
At first, more than 12,000 years ago, it was kept in the open, at the Sentinel Enclave outside Marcuria. However, when thieves attempted to make away with the disc, it was taken away.
Why?
So that the 4 parts of the disc could be divided amongst 4 of the magical people of Arcadia. People who would have nothing to gain from the balance being compromised.
Okay, so which people are that?
What people were the disc divided amongst?
This I cannot tell you. I am not sure anyone remembers now. But it would be in the scriptures, I am certain.
Okay, so you don't know.
The scriptures of the balance. There are 13 of them. 13 is a strong number, rich in tradition, and did you know the Ireed High Council consists of 13 ministers? No, of course you don't. 13 was also the number of the fathers who begat the Sentinel, and who built the Tower of Balance.
Okay, where can I find the scriptures that will help me figure this out?
Where can I find the scriptures of the balance?
Again, you will find these texts at the Sentinel Enclave. Speak with Minstrom Yerin.
Okay, good. And what about the entrance to the Guardian's realm?
I need to find the entrance to the Guardian's realm.
There is one. You are right in that, but where, I would not venture to guess. In the past, when the time came for the Guardian to step down and another to take his or her place, the Guardian opened a gateway wherever it was needed. A Guardian, still in full control of the balance, can invite anyone in and let anyone out. But with the Guardian gone, the only way in would be the point where the divide was first created, where the tower was built.
Isn't that location written down somewhere?
Remember that this was done on the old Earth before the divide. After the divide, after the creation of Stark and Arcadia, places were shifted about. This entrance may not even be on the ground anymore.
What do you mean?
It could be up there, in the sky, or far below us, through the crust of the Earth into the molten depths below. I cannot say, and I do not know anyone who could.
Isn't there any way to locate the entrance to the Guardian's realm?
Perhaps with careful investigation of the old texts, histories of Arcadia, of the Divide, the scriptures. I do not know, April, but it cannot hurt to look. Again, you will find these texts at the Sentinel Enclave. Speak with Minstrom Yerin.
Okay, I get it.
Thank you, Tobias.
You could maybe also ask Westhouse what he knows. Help us on our quest.
Hi there, Mr. Westhouse. I'm back.
My word. What on earth possessed you to return to this godforsaken place? You were lucky to escape the first time, but now you're really pushing it.
It's not that bad a place, or else you wouldn't stay here. Besides, this time I didn't exactly come here by choice.
I stay here because I'm a true masochist, Miss Ryan. And who forced you to come? Was it Cortez?
He doesn't even know I'm here, unfortunately. No, I think I had some kind of accident with my so-called powers. I shifted in my underwear.
No, ha! Isn't that the way it is, though? We always cross the rift at the most inopportune times. Care for a drink? Oh, no, that's right. You, don't.
I do not drink.
Would you mind helping me with a few questions?
I've nothing better to do, so shoot.
Let's see. Do you know about dragons?
Do you know anything about dragons?
I try to stay out of the affairs of the kin these days. What precisely do you wish to know about the damn beasts?
Where I could find
There are
them?
two dragons in Arcadia, and I'm trying to locate them.
Yeah, I've heard that tale myself, but no, I don't know anything about it. You'd be better off speaking with the Sentinel Minstrom. After all, religion is their specialty, not mine.
Have you heard this story? A god fell from the sky?
Did you ever hear a story about a god who fell from the sky?
Stories aren't my thing, April. You should visit a library. I'm sure you'll find some stories in the books. I know the Sentinel have a library somewhere near the city.
Okay,
I've
she's telling us.
also heard rumor of a people with wings who do nothing but observe and record history through stories. But I don't know if that's all it is. A rumor. Still, if you're looking for stories, it may be wise to check it out and see if you can find them.
He seems to be telling us the same thing. But what is this about flying people? Because that is a new thing. I have not heard about that.
What did you say about the flying people?
They're supposed to be great storytellers, and they've been observing this world for a very long time. But it could only be a rumor.
Well, you don't seem to know a lot, but it is comforting, I suppose, to know that there's people that aren't from around here. So this, that we've seen on the map, this is where the Enclave is.
Some kind of sandstone, very malleable, but also very vulnerable to the elements. These cliffs probably have huge, naturally formed caves and tunnels.
This is where the Sentinel library is supposed to be. Right in here. Ooh, interesting.
It's a circular hollow about 20 centimeters across and about 5 centimeters deep. The dragon's mouth is pointing straight down at the middle of the floor.
Let's go down the stairs. It's certainly more intricate down here than I thought it would be.
It's one of the Sentinel minstrels.
Oh, goodness me, I didn't hear you come in. By the way, you haven't seen Volume 6 of the Complete Annotated History of the Northlands, have you? I could have sworn it was here yesterday.
Sorry, no.
I guess someone else must have taken it. I try to tell them to write down what they borrow on the list, but they never listen. Only last week I spent 3 hours searching the entire Enclave for the second scripture of the balance, the scripture of song, before I realized that Vestrum Tobias was studying it back in the city.
Terrible.
Now, such incidents could be avoided if only, and this applies to you too, young lady, people would sign out the books they borrow when they borrow them and sign them back in when they're done. Such a simple procedure. It shouldn't take more than a few seconds to jot down your name and the name of the book you borrow. It makes my job so much easier. Now, which book did you want me to find for you?
We should have a couple options, but we'll see.
Are you Minstrom Yaren?
Yes, of course. What a silly question.
How would I know? I don't know you.
I am Minstrom Yaren, keeper of the great library of Mercuria. In fact, this is the greatest library of all the Northlands. Perhaps
Is it the only one?
The entire world. Although they say the Dark People have a library as big, if not bigger, than this one. But of course, we're not allowed anywhere near there. Have you been there?
Not yet.
I don't think...
What a silly question. Of course you haven't. You're not of the Dark People, are you? You don't look like any Dark People I've ever seen, so I can't see how you could possibly... Now, where did Volume 6 disappear to?
Tobias said I should talk with you.
Tobias? Vestrum Tobias? I haven't seen him for... Well, he was in last week, but before that it must have been days at least. How is he? Still eating enough for 2 mules?
He seems fine.
I must tell you of this funny story I heard the other day, of how Vestrum Tobias eats enough for a table full of minstrum. Or was it one Elguan? Although the Elguan don't, as a rule, eat very much at all. Did you know that the Elguan can smell water more than half a day's journey away? Amazing, amazing creatures, perfectly suited for life in the desert. The balance provides, that's for certain. The balance provides.
Interesting creatures. I was told I should read some books.
Vestrum Tobias recommended that I look at some books.
Books is what we do best here at the Enclave, that is for certain. Which book would you like to see?
Is there a story called The Silver Spear of Gorimon?
I'm looking for a story called The Silver Spear of Gorimon.
Yes, a fanciful tale if I ever saw one, but a charming one. Did you know that I'm often paid visit by adventurers wishing to read everything available on the spear so that they too can set out on their foolish quests?
Yeah, don't you just hate those adventurers?
Well, they pay for my bread, milk, and butter with their contributions to the coffers, so I shouldn't be too critical of them. But they care not about the books. They care only about what the books can give them.
I care. About the books, really.
I can tell. So, the Silver Spear of Gorimon, then?
Yes, please. Oh, now he's gonna retrieve it for me. He's found it. He's putting it down for us to read.
Find something of interest. I'll leave it here for you to read.
I also found out the hard way that if you want to put a book away for a moment, that you have to watch the entire animation of the minstrel picking up the book, putting it away, and then you have to ask him again to pull the book out, and you have to watch that again. So it's great. I mean, I simultaneously love that and I hate it because it doesn't really respect the player's time. At the same time, it is just... They did the work on that. It's like nice and detailed. Let's read a couple of storybooks and hope that we get a better understanding of this world of Arcadia and what we might have to do to save the world. So the Silver Spear of Gorimon is one that was talked about by... can we see it in the diary? By Abnaxus. He heard about a god who fell from the stars into the ocean a long time ago. Let's see. Tobias also just says you should really read the books about this stuff. Even Westhouse said he's heard stories about people that observe history, but he said if you want stories, you should go read books. So that's what we're doing now. Ignore the glitch, it goes away on its own at some point. This is an old game. In the glory days of Bakshiva, before the drought, when Gorimon was the greatest city in the known world, the Parek of Bakshiva decided to forge the most powerful weapon in the world to challenge the mighty White Dragon. I think that's the mother, isn't it? The Parek had grown greedy and bored, his treasure hold filled with the riches of the world, and he desired nothing except the one thing he could never have, the unborn daughter of the White Dragon, the fairest, purest, most beautiful creature in the universe. He had asked the White Dragon for her daughter's hand in marriage, but she had refused, scolding him for his insolence and warning him to keep his distance from immortals. We may have seen the unborn daughter, if that's the dragon egg that we saved at the beginning of the game. And so the Parek sought the advice of the mighty sorcerer, the dark and cruel Eos, to learn how to kill one of the Draic Kin. The sorcerer told the Parek of the white silver of Mount Tyranny, the strongest substance in Arcadia, and how it could be forged by magic to kill even one of the kin. The Parek ordered his army to go north across the ocean and to bring back enough white silver to shape a weapon. When his men returned with the rare metal, the Parek ordered the finest blacksmith in Bakshiva to his castle where Eos the sorcerer cast a spell to create an unholy forge. 10 days and 10 nights it took before the exhausted blacksmith could present a tall spear to his emperor. But before the spear could be used to kill one of the kin, it had to be bathed in blood. Beheading the poor blacksmith and the soldiers who had retrieved the white silver from Mount Tyranny, the Perec's private bath was filled with their blood. As he dropped the silver spear into the red bath, watched over by Eos, a terrible scream erupted and steam rose up in a red, foul-smelling cloud. When the steam lifted, the blood was all gone and the spear was glowing in a deep red color. With the terrible weapon now ready to be wielded, the Perec issued a challenge to the White Dragon to either surrender her daughter to him for marriage or to suffer a painful death at his hand. Enraged, the White Dragon refused him yet again and flew to meet the Perec, his sorcerer and his 1,000-strong army on the green fields outside Goramon. Of the magical silver spear she knew nothing, and the Perec kept it wrapped in cloth by his side. "Bring your forces around, Perec," warned the White Dragon. "If you do not, I will lay waste to them all." "I wish my men no harm," lied the Perec, "for this is between the two of us." He then rode forward alone and dismounted his horse, but stayed within reach of the spear. The White Dragon landed before him, and she said, "You are brave to face me like this when you know you cannot harm me." Then the Perec raised his hand as if to greet her, but it was instead a sign to his sorcerer, the terrible Eos, who cast a mighty spell to hold the White Dragon while the Perec drew his silver spear. The White Dragon fought bravely. She was close to escaping the sorcerer's magic, but the Perec was quick and he thrust the magic spear into her chest. She screamed in pain and anger, and the sorcerer's spell could no longer hold her. Rising on her beautiful wings, blood pouring down on the land below, she cursed Bakshiva, her Perec, and her people for all time. Wherever the White Dragon's blood fell, the land turned arid and green grass became sand. The Perec sent his army to follow the White Dragon and to bring back her egg, but the drought grew, and within days, the once proud empire of Bakshiva was turning into a desert. Then followed a fierce storm that tore across the land for 100 days and nights, and when the dust settled, there was nothing left of Bakshiva but 2 coastal cities and a few scattered oases. It is said that in the buried ruins of a lost capital, wrapped in the arms of the Perec who dared test the immortal, rests the silver spear of Goramon.
Are you done? Let me take that back for you.
So what we've learned is there's a story about a legendary weapon that could hurt the dragons, the Draic Kin. But no one's found it.
Oh, goodness, it's you again. Oh, you gave me such a fright.
I want to see another book.
Could I see some more books?
Oh, certainly. What a silly question.
A book on the history of Marcuria would be interesting.
Ah, an extensive subject to be sure. I will do my best.
Something else we've learned is that he's missing a book that could be important. So I wonder if that becomes something significant, or if it's just flavor text for him not having a great sign-in, sign-out method yet for the books. Or rather, he has a sheet for signing out books, but...
I did find something of interest. I'll leave it here for you to read.
But people don't sign their name, so he doesn't always know when people are borrowing something. So this history book is called Travel in the Northlands by Germain the Discoverer. The first part. In my many years as a traveling poet and bard, I have journeyed far and wide across the fair realm of Arcadia, and I have seen sights most people have not dreamed. I've stood on the magnificent and terrible southern capes in the midst of winter, when the storms are at their fiercest, while waves as tall as the towers of Altaban washed over my frozen body. I've witnessed the monstrous beasts that lurk in those dark and deadly waters of the South Swallow brave galleons whole, creatures the size of mountains that with a flick of a tail can touch the depths of the sea and the stars themselves. I've crossed the great ocean from north to south, and from east to west, and in the course been stranded on desert islands, with no sustenance but what I could gather from the sparse vegetation for months at a time. I have ridden the giant Elguan across Chungagriel, the wasteland from Altaban to Monturba, and further south where the Teruk, the oasis, are far and few between. And I have seen the shifting dunes above the ruins of Goramon, precious jewel of the Bakshivan Empire, concealed for centuries by the coarse and treacherous sand. And I have journeyed far west, carried on goodwill and destiny by shadow ships, to the strange and unknown cliffs of a world unseen by most, a world of an unfamiliar tongue and customs, a world of great wonder and mysticism. I have seen all this and more, but the fairest sights still I have seen in the lands of the north, from Aerid to the border mountains, from Tyren to the Bay of Fire. No sight can ever compare to dawn at Mount Tyranne, looking out to the plains of Nidra, where wild stallions run free in the thousands, and to look on the city of Coruscant, the Pearl of Fire, while the boiling sun sets in the ocean beyond, the slow waves reflecting dark yellow and red as they lap slowly upon the sand shores, is an experience truly treasured and ne'er forgotten. These lands are blessed by the Creator, shaped by men, yet wild and free and fertile, home to the greatest cities, the most precious sights, and the most cultured and civilized people in Arcadia. Of all the fires I have rested my weary legs by, of all the taverns where I have learned the legends of tale spinners and memorized the songs of bards, of all the lands where I have wandered from city to village, it is to the Northlands I return time and time again to learn ever more. Join me now, for I will evoke in you the very emotions I first experienced when visiting the sights and treasures of the northern lands. Join me, and I will surely bring you there, to the exotic midst of this blessed land, and you will pine for its rugged coast and green woods, and its hardy people, and like me, you will ne'er rest until you can return to yonder shores. Marcuria. O Marcuria, thou unkempt diamond, of capitals thou art by truth the fairest. Thy counsel many seek, for knowledge kept within its centuries sought and gathered. By men wiser than the ages, brought hither by word of mouth, Marcuria, changed thou not the course of war between thine people? Diplomat, wise man, magician, all this and more, thou hast without equal the mark of merit and virtue. Written by Jermaine Earthrin, the poet. The august capital of Aerid, the unified country, Marcuria lies on the hardy southern coast of the Northlands, halfway between Tyren and Coruscant. It is a port of call for merchants, traders, adventurers, and pilgrims from all four continents, a place of commerce and diplomacy for millions of humans and other species. I wanted to say in between, if I mispronounce something, I apologize. There are some words here that I find either difficult to pronounce or I haven't heard them pronounced by any of the NPCs yet, so I'm just kind of guessing. Also, what this story so far has done is it did point out that Jermaine, the Discoverer, also saw hidden in the sands what used to be the capital of Bakshiva, where allegedly this weapon is. So that's the only link that I've found so far. Aerid is a strong and proud land perched between the plains of Nidra to the north, the lands of the Tyren to the west, the Great Sea to the south, and the forests of the Northlands to the east. Inhabited by humans, Dolmari, Tyren, Mole people, and Veneer. Aerid was formed after Marcuria emerged as a major center for diplomacy and trade, and became the banner under which the surrounding lands united as one. Aerid is a democracy, currently led by the Chief Council of the Aerid Flag, Lord Igvan Dellen. The High Council, composed of the ministers who govern by representation, resides in the Marcurian Hall of Assembly, flanked by the palace and the barracks. The Aerides are traditionalists, and their form of government has barely changed over the last few millennia. In High Tongue, Aerid means unification or assembly. Marcuria is one of the largest cities of Arcadia, the capital of Ireed, and a center for trade, diplomacy, and cultural diversity. Populated by a large variety of races, from human to Vanir, Marcuria has grown from its origins as the birthplace of humanity to a city of all Arcadians and a hub of the civilized world. Birthplace of humanity is interesting. How many more pages do I have? Founded 20,000 years ago at the shore of the then unconquerable ocean, it is the first known permanent settlement of the emerging human race. Initially left to its own devices by more developed races, Marcuria grew large and fat and wealthy with newfound confidence. It passed through a period of expansion which gained it a reputation as a merciless aggressor, which soon brought violent attention from the Tyrene in the west and the Dolmari in the north. After years of war, Marcuria was decimated and subsequently rebuilt with sufficient reinforcements to weather attacks from both sea and land. Peaceful times followed, whereupon Marcuria settled into the role it has in today's Arcadia. Although all surrounding areas fall under its jurisdiction, there is sufficient self-governing and few central taxes to appease all but the most disgruntled. The huge areas of farmland around the city benefit from the well-kept roads, markets, and the busy export to other lands. Nearby villages benefit from the military might of Marcuria, protecting them against roving barbarians and Tyrene armies. And Marcuria also provides the people of the Northlands with one of the best and busiest ports in Arcadia, allowing travel to distant destinations around the world. Oh, and while I have him fetch a new book, I'll go drink a sip of tea. Good thing I made tea right before recording. I usually always have a cup of tea with me, but I haven't had to do that much reading out loud in a while.
I did find something of interest. I'll leave it here for you to read.
Okay, folk tales might be that what Brian Westhouse also talked about. We'll see. Sadra the Faithful Wife is this story called. Sadra was married to a brute of a man named Care. Kare? Let's go with Care. He was a bully who drank, cursed, gambled, and beat up his wife when he'd lost coins at the cups table. Still, Sadra treated Care with respect and care. So, oh, yeah, I see the issue here. She fed him when he was hungry, she made his bed and washed his back, and she laid down with him when he told her to. She never complained of her hardships to anyone, even though some days she woke up with bruises all over her body. Oh girl, get out of that relationship. Despite her husband's treatment, Sadra was a beautiful woman with lovely dark hair and green eyes, and men would admire her when she went to the market for food or the town well for water. That's sad. That's pretty sad. Abusive relationships. But none dared approach her, fearing her dangerous husband more than they admired her beauty and grace. People would say, poor Sadra, she deserves better than what she has. She is so good and patient, even though her husband mistreats her every day. But no one was willing to do anything to free her from her husband, as they all feared his wrath. She chooses her own path, they would say, and it is not our duty to interfere. Then one day, a tall and handsome prince rode into town to visit with the Elder Council. When he spotted Sadra carrying 2 heavy buckets from the well to her home, on the edge of town, he was taken with her beauty and youth, and he jumped down from his horse to help her carry buckets home. On the way, he offered Sadra courtship, but when she told she was already married, he bowed respectfully and excused himself for acting inappropriately. That night, Sadra's husband heard about the prince helping his wife, and after striking her down for letting royalty interfere with her duties, he strode drunkenly, for he had already had his usual fill of dark ale, towards the tavern where the prince and his cohorts were staying. When Care arrived at the tavern, the prince was eating dinner, and when told Sadra's husband was there to see him, the prince stood and waved the man closer. "I must congratulate you on your good taste in marriage," said the prince, "for your wife is the most beautiful and good-hearted woman I have ever met." And then he offered Care a seat and a tall mug of ale. But the angry husband did not appreciate the prince's advances, and he drew a sword and lunged at the prince before his guards could react. The prince was quick and lucky to avoid certain death, and before Care could make a second strike, the prince had recovered his sword from where it stood by the wall, and stood ready to fight the brute. "Leave him be," called the prince when his guards drew arms and ran to protect their liege. "This is between him and me." Smiling briefly, he nodded his head to Kerr and stood to attention. Obviously, his skill with the sword was formidable. Kerr, a coward at heart, knew that if he fought fairly he would surely die, and he sheathed his sword but loosened the knife he had tucked up his long sleeve. "My pardon, Prince," said Kerr. "My love for my wife is such that I am blinded by jealousy. I offer you friendship and apologies." He extended an open hand to the prince and smiled a broad lizard smile. The prince, unaware of Kerr's mistreatment of his faithful wife, smiled back, put down his sword and extended his own hand. "Your apology is accepted, sir." Then suddenly, Kerr's knife was in his hand and moving in a blur towards the prince's exposed throat. Had it not been for the quick eye of a nearby guard, who with the broadside of his sword struck Kerr on the side of his head, the prince would have been dead. The knife carved a deep scar in the prince's shoulder, but did no serious harm. Kerr was taken away to the town prison to be judged when the sun rose. His crime was surely punishable by death, especially if Sadra would testify to his cruelty in front of the judge. Free of Kerr's tyranny, the townspeople now spoke of Sadra's suffering by her husband's hand, but Sadra would not herself, even now, speak against her husband, and instead of being sentenced to death, Kerr was sent away to work the king's mines for 25 years. Taken with her faithfulness, the prince yet again offered Sadra courtship. But yet again, Sadra declined, for she was still a married woman. Then 1 year later, Kerr attempted to escape the king's mines by killing 2 guards and climbing the walls, but he was shot down with an arrow and died in agony and disgrace. Again the prince visited Sadra's town, bringing condolences and a renewed offer of courtship, and this time Sadra agreed. Months later, the prince and Sadra were married in a glorious ceremony, and when the old king died, the prince became regent and Sadra his queen. She was as good a queen as the land has ever seen, and she was loved dearly until the day she died. And her funeral was the grandest and most tearful in memory. And then there's a second story, The Children of the Lake. There was a village by a lake where no couple had borne a child for 20 years. The villagers were desperate, for without children their village would wither and die, and they turned to their god for help. The next morning, 50 young children rose out of the misty lake and wandered onto the shores, much to the joy of the childless women. "We are yours," said one of the children, "as long as you remember one thing. You are never to fish from this lake again. Instead, you must learn to hunt in the forest and live off the land." The villagers agreed, though they worried they might go hungry, since they were used to catching and eating fish from the lake. But it didn't take long before they had taught themselves to hunt and grow wheat and potatoes in the fields. 18 years passed, and then one day an old man grew tired of rabbits and deer and potatoes and bread, and he longed to catch a big fish and cook it over a sizzling fire. He took his boat out to where the villagers could not see him, and he sank his line. Almost immediately he caught a large trout, but as he was rowing back to shore, he saw the children of the lake wander from their homes back into the dark waters from whence they came. Their mothers called for them, tried to hold on to them, begged them not to leave, but they would not speak, and one by one they disappeared into the lake. The old fisherman then saw, as the children sank into the murky waters, how they turned into large fish and sped off into the deep. He was shameful then, and he dropped his catch back in the water, but it was too late, and the village would forevermore remain childless.
Are you done? Let me take that back for you. Oh,
Could I...
oh, certainly.
I'm looking for some information, but I'm not sure which book to ask for.
No matter. I know a great deal about most of the books in here. What topic intrigues you?
Oh, there's a lot here. Any books about flying people who observe and tell stories?
Are there any books about flying people who observe and tell stories?
Winged storytellers, hmm? Let me see what I can find. Hold on.
I just found something. That is what Westhouse was talking about.
Of interest. I'll leave it here.
The island of Elias, near the Briston Atoll. Maybe I should try to go there.
Aha! I think that's That's the thing. Now we have somewhere new to visit. People's Diary? So Westhouse, I went to the library. Yes, me, imagine that. To look for some information about those flying creatures that Brian told me about, and with Minstrom Yaren's help, I found just what I was looking for. They're actually called the Alatian, and there's a tribe of them living on an island south of here, Alay, which is such good news considering how much I love water, and that was my sarcastic voice, by the way. Now, who do I know with a ship? The ship captain, of course, that we met before. One page, luckily. Alatian, a crafty winged people who have recently dwindled in numbers, and whose ability to fly long distances has been steadily diminishing over the past few centuries. The Alatian are known for their ability to remember and tell stories from before the dawn of mankind and up to modern events. The largest known tribe of Alatian with whom traders have occasional contact resides on the otherwise uninhabited island of Alay in the Briston Atoll.
Are you done? Let me...
So that is the place we're gonna try and visit next. But there are 2 more books to ask the Minstrom about.
I need to find out which 4 magical people of Arcadia were given a piece of the stone disc that serves as the key to the Guardian's realm.
The stone disc of the balance, yes? Yes. There could possibly be something on that in... let me check. Just one moment.
I wonder if we're gonna meet more Sentinels, because other than this old guy and Father Tobias, we haven't met anyone who's part of the Sentinels that we know of. Because if it's just a couple of old men, then it's a surprise that the Vanguard haven't overthrown them already.
I did find something of interest.
Chapter 16 in the 8th scripture, the Scripture of Breaking, regarding the Disc of the Balance and the events that came about when the disc was broken. The scriptures tell us that the disc was kept at the Enclave for many thousands of years, safely guarded from any threat by the respect held by every man and woman for the authority of the Fathers. But with dissent came disobedience, and disobedience brought immorality, and immorality begat theft. Tyrant soldiers, aided by Sentinel traitors, attempted to make away with the disc, but were thwarted by the Wight of the Kin herself, intervening, although forbidden to do so, on behalf of the Fathers. The disc was brought safely back to the Enclave, but the threat would linger in the minds of the Minstrom and the Vestrum, so it became that the disc was melted in the forge of the Dragon's Mouth, shaped into the elements of 4 magical people, and given to these respective people for safekeeping until such a time when it was decreed that the disc should once more be whole. 1 stone to the gentle souls that sing in the dark and shape the earth between their toes. 1 stone to the watchers of the woods, the ones who are outside. 1 stone to the 2 that make 1 of air and of sea. And 1 stone to the keepers of the dark flame, the eternally dark, the mariners. When the time comes for the disc to be whole again, 1 person will make a journey to the 4 who hold the pieces, and the pieces will be given willingly because there will be no doubt to the righteousness of this person. Great, more puzzles.
Are you done? Let me take that...
So with the clues, we can figure out what peoples have different pieces. Also, it seems like the Tyranese are straight up bad guys. And it's going to be up to us to go and retrieve those pieces. And then there's one more about the Draic Kin.
I'd like to learn more about dragons, about the Draic Kin.
Oh, yes. We have some wonderful books on that topic. Stay here.
Okay, that'll be the last thing to read here. Secrets of the Draic Kin by Minstrom Eliak. Forward. The Draic Kin are known by many names throughout the Twin Worlds. In All Tongue, they are often referred to as Draic Kin. In some variations of Low Tongue, Draic Kin. In the Southlands, the word Draigic refers specifically to the winged lizard shape traditionally associated with the kin. In Earhad, the eternal spirits of the kin are simply called Draic, regardless of their current shape. In Stark, most cultures refer to the kin as dragon. Drake, Drecha, Dragon. Though this usually refers only to the winged lizard-like shape and not to the spirit inhabiting this shape. In fact, while in Arcadia, the kin are respected and revered as eternal spirits, with great significance in the balance and the all. In Stark, the kin are mostly creatures of mythology and fairy tales. However, in some Stark legends and scriptures, notably the Christian Bible, the name dragon is associated with the forces of evil, and thus the religious connotations do seem to have carried over in a somewhat distorted form. Who or what are the Draic Kin? Why not ask, who is the creator? Or what is the all? Questions thus asked will remain, in perpetuity, unanswered, for they are in truth unanswerable. To condense all knowledge of the creator into one answer is futile, as is any attempt to define the all without describing every single element that makes up the all. So also with the Draic Kin. We cannot answer who is the kin or what is the kin, but we can provide some answers to the simpler questions, the questions that deal with what we see and hear and feel, and what we have been told by the kin themselves. Answers that together may give us, if only the faintest hint of the whole truth, then at least some indication of who or what the Draic Kin are. Born of the emptiness between the stars, reads the 11th scripture of the balance, the scripture of time. Shaped in unison with the all, part of the all, yet outside the all. Draic Kin, note the ancient High Tongue variation of Draic Kin. Why so many variations in interpretation of the Draic Kin from culture to culture? The kin have always been shrouded in mystery, and from mystery rises legend and myth. The kin seem content to be seen as nothing but tall tales and figments of a bard's fertile imagination.
Are you done?
Right, we've learned as much as we could for right now. And now we've figured out that there is a place we have to go visit. Across the sea. Oh, what is this?
Assorted cargo.
No, this guy. Okay, he's just walking away. Captain Nebeve.
Hello.
Do you know the island of Alais?
Do you know the island of Elias?
Alais.
The vacation paradise of the ancient Delmari? Certainly.
How do I get there?
It's near the Briston Atoll, but boats rarely travel directly to Briston from Arcadia. You'd have to travel via Guyenne.
Can I get to Guyenne with you?
Can you give me a lift to Guyenne on your ship?
There was no wind,
There
though.
are 3 problems with that scenario. Number 1, there's no wind, so we can't set sail south. Number 2, I lost my navigator a few weeks past, and I have yet to find his replacement. And number 3, you're a woman. We don't let women on board the White Dragon.
Isn't that a bit sexist?
Sexy is just what I worry about. What with a boat full of men being out at sea for months at a time?
Not what I meant,
Not
but okay.
sexy. Sexist.
I'm a sailor, girl. What do you expect? Good bedside manners?
Okay, it would be really cool, though.
I'd really appreciate it if I could hitch a ride with you to Guyenne.
Ain't gonna happen. Sorry.
Okay, there is one more thing I can ask, and that is, what about this story about a god that fell from the sky into the sea?
Do you know anything about a god that fell from the sky into the sea?
Of course. You find fallen gods most everywhere these days. They're an air and a hand.
Really?
No, of course not. There are no fallen gods in the sea. It wouldn't make much sense, would it? If the sea was full of gods just lying about the seabed.
Oh, what about just one
So
of them?
You've never heard of such a thing happening?
Now you got it.
Well, thanks for the information.
Bye.
We know another old sailor.
Hello again, old man.
It be you.
Do you know the island of Alaeus?
Do you know the island of Alaeus?
Aye, I be knowing lots and lots about the feared Isle of Alaeus.
It's feared? How?
Because it be a place of cannibals.
Really?
You really don't know anything about the island of Alaeus, do you?
No, I do not.
Do you know how I can get passage on a boat going south?
Do you know how I can get passage on a boat going south?
Aye, coin be the way, as me beloved wife always be saying. 'Course she'd be running off with a wealthy merchant while I be away at sea. Women, never trusted one I didn't pay for again.
I don't have much coin at all.
And I be at a loss, as do ye, unless...
Unless what?
I need coin to travel in a boat unless... what?
Unless I be calling in a favor with the good Captain Horatio Nebave, who be traveling to Guyenne as soon as the wind be picking up.
What kind of favor?
Oh, he be owing me from back when I was his captain.
Oh, that is... Wait. Would you cash in your favor if I got your bird?
Would you cash in your favor with Nebave if I got your bird back?
Aye, I be promising anything to get me friend back. It be a deal.
See you later.
If I not be dead, aye.
And that's exactly what we'll do. This time we have money to go gamble. Try and get the bird back.